So, anything you need to know about me before we get started in order to feel comfortable sitting here listening to this woman talk to you about stress? Any questions?
Educational background.
My educational background. Many moons ago, I started in nursing. So, had a career in nursing, taught nursing for a while, then did a degree in public administration. So, taught at Dow in the School of Health Admin, Human Resources and Labor Relations, and an executive level certificate, master's level certificate in executive coaching. So that's the educational background. Anything else?
What exactly is the certified executive coach?
Certified executive coach. That's a really good question, and I think I give a different answer every time somebody asks me that question. But an executive coach is someone who would partner with an individual, usually individuals, could be teams, for the purpose of addressing a concern or an issue or something that the individual wants to address, usually around their professional development. Could be their personal life, but it's usually around their professional development. So it's essentially a one-on-one coaching type, partnering type of relationship where my job is to bring the process of coaching, and invite a client into a conversation, dialogue, where we really get at and uncover some of the things that are in the way of he or she, him or her, moving forward with whatever the thing is that's important for them. Usually it starts out as, individuals think it's this, but when you really get to the bottom of it, it's this. And then the outcome of the coaching is the client usually generates a plan that he or she can implement to move forward beyond the thing that is blocking them from moving forward. Yeah, so it's not counseling, and it's not mentoring. It's not really prescriptive like that. It's very much, it's all about the client, and the coach brings the process and the skill to be able to help uncover what that is. Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else? One thing an executive coach can do is hang out in silence a lot longer than anybody else. So if I ask you a question, I can wait for the answer, because that's what I do. Okay, however, we've only got so much time, so we're going to talk about stress. And usually there's a question that's, what do you do? Well, what do you do to deal with stress? And I do have an answer to that, but I'm not going to give it to you just yet. This is not going to be about here's the 101 things that you can do to deal with the stress in your life. I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach to talking about stress, so we can talk about what it actually is, what is it, where does it come from, and what can you do about it. And part of the reason why I want to take this approach about it is if we learn what it is and we learn how much control we actually have over dealing with the stuff that we call stress in our lives every day, then we can start to make choices about how we want to deal with it. What do you want to get from today? Yeah.
Just a few techniques on how to manage stress, daily stress.
Okay. Some ideas about how to manage it on a daily basis. Okay, what else?
How to recognize it.
How to recognize it. Okay. What else?
Your perspective and your experience, what you've gathered from working with other people who are in stressful situations.
Okay. What else?
Maybe how to help others.
How to help others who are dealing with it. Okay. All right. Cool. Stress is simply, it's a physiological response. It's a physiological response, a reaction that we have to pressure or demand. And really what happens to us, we go into a state of emotional or mental strain when we are stressed. And that can happen in a variety of circumstances. So I'm sure if I said to you, how many of you are within either yourself or your extended family are experiencing things like financial issues, teenage issues, health issues, relationship issues, work issues, I'm sure every single one of our hands would be able to go up. That's just part of our life. And the body has a way of coping with the demands that are placed on it, and that's stress. It's simply a signal within the body that's offering us the opportunity to identify and adjust. Identify the question, how do I recognize it? And adjust, how do I cope to our perception of any situation. Started to first see the term in 1936, so this is not going to be a history lesson. And it was defined at that time as a non-specific response of a body to any change, any demand for change. You guys will know about this. Hooke's Law of 1658. It didn't account for that. And later on, as Selye continued to do his work, he started to introduce the word stressor to distinguish the stimulus from the response, and later redefined stress to be the rate of wear and tear on the body. The rate of wear and tear on the body. So, one of the things, tell you a little story. I was getting ready to do this presentation, sat down and went over it with my husband, who, as I was explaining to Rosemary, when you open up a dictionary and you look at the word calm, there's my husband's face. But I was going through this presentation with him and talking to him about, okay, so, what do you think? And he really locked on to the rate and wear and tear on the body. So now when I get in I get a little ramped up, he just simply says to me, what are you doing to your body right now? And that has the effect of helping me manage the situation, because he's bringing my attention to the fact that I'm having a physiological response to something that I don't even really need to be ramped up about. And I'll say more about that in a minute. But I'd love for you to remember, stress is the rate of wear and tear on the body. And I'll tell you why. So where does it come from? We have both internal and external sources of stress. Our internal sources of stress, that's a lot about the stories we tell ourselves. That's a lot about the dialogue that runs along in our head. It's the junk we convince ourselves of. It's the impression that we take away from the situation that we're in. It's our attitude. It's our belief. All of that stuff is internal stress that we create ourselves. And then we have the external stress that's imposed because we live. We've got our environment, our life events, work-related events, school-related events, professional events. Every day creates stress. But this can be a big source of stress right here. The stuff that we've got going on, that dialogue that we've got going on inside our head, and the stories that we tell ourselves, and our reactions, the stories that we tell ourselves in reaction to the things that we experience. And our body is constantly trying to maintain this state of homeostasis, this state of steady state, always fighting to maintain this particular steady state. We are fight-flight creatures, and essentially most of the time it wants us to be here in this homeostatic place. It doesn't want us to be in flight mode, no pun intended, flight mode most of the time. And so what helps us is we've got the endocrine system, which is really a system of glands that release hormones that control our growth, our metabolic, all our metabolism, and our sexual function. And so this is the system in our bodies, these pineal glands, our hypothalamus, pituitary, parathyroid, thyroid, thalamus, our adrenals, which sit on top of our kidneys, our pancreas, our ovaries, our testicles. They play a huge role in helping maintain our growth, our metabolism, and our sexual function, and our stress. Because cortisol is the stress hormone. So, long story, brain sends a signal to the pituitary gland, which sends a signal to the adrenal glands, which releases cortisol. And so there's this whole communication system that happens that when the body is stressed, the brain recognizes, oh, this is stress, chemical dump, and dumps cortisol into our system to help us deal with that particular stress. And so what happens to us, we've got blood flow to our muscles, our heart rate increases, our blood sugar increases, our blood pressure in our arteries increases, our pupils dilate, our gut muscles relax because blood needs to flow from the gut to the rest of our body to keep us in flight mode, our breathing increases, and we've got a ton of stress hormones circulating in our body. Now, there are times when we need to be stressed, right?
Did you bring this? This is so. You do this in zero baby age, not perfect.
Well, I thought this would sure as heck stress me out, right? I mean, there are times when we need to have that stress hormone. We're designed for that. It's short burst of cortisol, short burst of, okay, let's get in flight mode here. Let's get this thing figured out. The trouble is our physiological stress response is not able to distinguish from the real thing or something that we manufacture. So that chemical dump that we've got going on is happening anytime we're stressed, whether we need it or whether we don't. So when we need it, all of the right things happen. All of the organs do the things that they need to do to create the response to enable us to get rid of the threat. But when it's not needed, it sits in our bodies. And it sits in the organs and causes difficulty in all of our functions, the way all of our organs function. And a lot of it sits in our omentum, which is the covering around our abdomen. You cannot lose weight when you're stressed because the cortisol is dumping in the omentum, dumping in that covering, and we just can't do it. It does not distinguish between when we need it and when we don't. And that's a huge thing to remember. So when my husband says to me, what are you doing to your body right now? He's essentially saying, you're having a cortisol dump, honey, and there's nowhere for it to go, and you don't need it. And so let's figure out what you're going to do about it. And ironically enough, road rage is commonly defined as one of the most, a societal condition where people, not me because I don't do it, but my kids do, lose their temper in response to a traffic situation. No reason, and they've got the same chemical dump thing going on as these guys do here. So who knew that? So what does that make you think about when you hear that?
Perspective.
Perspective. Say more.
Well, what's important in the situation? What is the desired outcome or the cause?
Yeah. What's important and what's the cost? Exactly.
Can you just explain this, what that picture on the left was representing?
Hold on. Just a stressful, like a legitimate stressful event, right? A legitimate stressful event versus, it doesn't know when there's a legitimate stressful event versus when there isn't one. Okay? Thank you for the question. So, when we don't need it, and we've got all this cortisol being dumped in our system, what's happening in our brain and nerves, here's the list. Headache, despair, lack of energy, sadness, nervousness, anger, irritability, and the list goes on. Trouble eating, trouble concentrating, memory issues, trouble sleeping, mental health issues such as anxiety attacks, panic attacks, and depression. Skin, all kinds of skin issues. Muscles and joint pain, increased risk of bone density, reduced bone density issues. If you talk to a chiropractor or a physiotherapist, they will tell you that your traps are your emotional muscle. And anybody who's got a lot of pain and issue in their neck and their upper shoulders and across the top of their back, that's the emotional muscle. That's chronic stress and chronic issues dealing with stress. Heart, you've got changes in heart rate, rise in blood pressure, high cholesterol, and heart attack. Stomach, nausea, stomach pain, heartburn, and weight gain. Pancreas, it increases your risk of diabetes. Intestines, all kinds of digestive problems. And for the reproductive system, women get more irregular and more painful periods and reduced sexual desire, and men get a lower sperm production and reduced sexual desire. And our immune system, lower ability for us to be able to fight an illness. And we do it to ourselves. So, our brain will respond in a different way based on how we perceive the amount of control that we have over an event. So if I perceive I have no control, my brain will respond in a particular way. If I perceive I have a lot of control, my brain will respond in a different way. The more stress that we're under, the greater amount of cortisol that's being dumped by the adrenal glands. So if I perceive I'm under a ton of stress, the corresponding physiological response is dump more cortisol to help me deal with that stress. Now remember, we're flight, fight creatures. And so we're designed for short bursts of cortisol to help us deal with the thing that is threatening us, but not for long-term stress over the long haul. And it is a matter of perspective. So how many of you could get on this roller coaster and go, woohoo? How many of you would get on it and go, get me off this thing? And how many of you wouldn't get on it? Matter of perspective. I once got them, I'm embarrassed to say this, I'm really embarrassed to say this, because I did get on a big one in Florida afterwards, but I did get them to have to stop the one in Upper Clements Park one time and let me off.
That one looks like it's going to fall apart.
Yeah, probably good reason. It is a matter of perspective. So let's just start to talk about perspective for a minute. What do you see in this picture? A duck. You're going to have to show me that.
Lady with a fur coat.
Lady with the fur coat.
A young woman driving away.
A young woman.
Because I can only see the top of it. A young woman and an old woman.
A young woman and an old woman. Who can see the young woman and the old woman in this picture? Okay. Sometimes it takes folks a while to see that, and some people get it right away. What are we looking for, and what's the thing that we see first? And so sometimes what we see is influenced by our perspective. So how do we shift perspective? Because the stress is not, the things that are causing the stress in our lives, that's not going to go away. Unless you hire an executive coach who helps you understand what it is, and of course then you're going to figure out how you want to deal with it differently. But typically the stress in our lives is not going to go away. There's going to be stuff. We'll just get one thing dealt with and then there'll be something else. So how do we shift perspective? They're going to give me 15-minute warning, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Thank you. It's all about moments, feeling, and choice. And one of you asked me earlier about my experience with this, and what I find is that when people realize, I got choice, I have a whole lot of choice, and they start to deal with the helplessness that they feel, and realize that they do have choice in a particular, then stuff happens. Their stress starts to shift. So how do we shift perspective? One of the first things we need to do is be. Just be. What do I mean by that?
Don't worry about things that are going to happen in the future or later.
Okay, so don't worry. One of the takes on is don't worry. What else?
Keep acting in the moment and don't put everything off. Don't get stressed in.
So in the moment. So how many of you, since you have been sitting here, have been running through the list of the things that you have to do when you get back to your office, when you get home tonight, when you get ready for vacation? How many, like, fess up, how many? Okay. You are not being. You're not being in the moment. And I'm not being critical, I'm just bringing your attention to another concept that I talk about. But anyway, you're in your head. You're in your head. One of the invitations is to recognize that I just need to be right here, right now, and present in the moment. And when I can get grounded and present in the moment, then I can make choices about how I want to be in that moment. So how many of you, like I have done many times, you know, you'll drive home and all of a sudden you're in the driveway, you can't remember how you got there. All right, did I take the old bridge or the new bridge? Right? One of the invitations is just when you're in the vehicle, it's a great place to be. Turn on the radio, you listen to the music, you take in everything that you're driving past, and just anchor yourself to be present in that particular time and space. So it's this shifting our perspective to realize that life is not a race, it's a series of moments, and to live each one of those moments so that I can be in choice in that moment is what success is really about. And sometimes what we have to do is learn a whole lot of things. You know, I'm in the moment and I don't like what's happening to me in the moment and I don't know particularly how to deal with it, so that means I need to find my voice to be able to say, not really okay with this, and make the moment work for you. So how do you get there? What's the conversation that's going on in my head right now? Where do I want my focus of attention to be right now? Who is in control in this moment? So when you're in a conversation with somebody else, you're in the moment, you're in a conversation, and somebody's at you, and that's creating the physiological response, and you're starting to feel yourself getting stressed, you are giving them your control. To be in the moment and to recognize that physiological response and to start to take back your own control, which we'll talk about in a minute. But ask yourself, who's in control of this moment? I want to be. So what are the things that I need to do to put me back in control? How am I breathing? How many here exercise on a regular basis? Okay, how many know how to diaphragmatically breathe? Okay, so someone tell us how to do that. How do you do it? Up you get.
I sing. So basically, it's you drop if you want to think about it, it's like a plastic bag right around here, and when you breathe down, it's like dropping sand or into it. So you kind of you breathe down. Everywhere around here should extend.
Exactly.
Basically.
So that's important because guess what? Guess where the joy hormone lives? The joy hormone lives at the base of our lungs. So if we're always doing our upper chest breathing and we're not breathing down into doing our diaphragmatic breathing and not breathing in the lower part of our abdomen, we're not accessing our joy hormone. I don't know about you, but I kind of like my joy hormone. So everybody get up, hand up here, stand up here, and Make your chest rise and fall. Just your chest rise and fall with in or out breathing.
Can I just give one pointer? Because I sing too, and this is what my teacher taught me, was that if your shoulders are moving up, then you're not doing it right. So yeah.
Okay, not doing diaphragm correctly. So but we're going to breathe for our chest for now. Just in and out, 1, 2, 3 breaths, real big breaths in and out with your chest. In and out with your chest. Another one. And one more. Now, breathe way down in your belly. Okay, so hands on your shoulders. Teach them how, guys. Hands on your shoulders. You've got a plastic bag down here, and you're going to try to fill it up. So you want these muscles down here, you want to push them out. And then let it go. Okay? So breathe way down. Can you come up to the front, show them what you want them to do? Come on. Come on. Come on.
I wouldn't want to do that. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thanks. But anyways, it's you want everything down below to extend. You know, some people say you should extend your stomach, but really it should be everything. So basically, it's and the shoulder thing. Don't do anything about it. Yeah, you don't want to move that. So basically, in the chest is about a third of your air can only go into the chest portion. And that's what most people do. But if you bring her down here, you'll get the other 2/3 of your 2/3. So just breathe in and make sure that things just follow. You see, I can't show this. I don't have an extended stomach or anything. How do you do that?
Hands here and just feel it.
Yeah, you should. If you put your hands all, right around the side, you should feel the back portion and the front portion extend. So, and shoulders should not move at all.
Once you've done 3, have a seat.
Don't faint, please.
Now, sometimes when you start to do that, if you haven't been doing that, you're going to get a little lightheaded. Yes, you can go in. You're going to get a little lightheaded because you're really drawing a whole lot of oxygen in more than you're used to using. But that in and of itself is a huge stress reliever. Just that itself, taking yourself to the bathroom, excuse me, I need to go for a minute, taking yourself to the washroom, and really deep breathing starts to bring your level of stress down, increases your level of joy, and helps you shift your focus in the moment. And most of us breathe too shallowly most of the time. And so it's only people who pay attention to how they breathe, learn how to use their full lung capacity and breathe deeply into deep using their abdominal and their muscles that support that. So it's also, you can figure it out when you're lying down in bed as well, because if you lie down in bed, put your hand up here and breathe, and then put your hand down here, you can actually feel yourself shift, and you can feel forcing the air down into the lower part of your lungs. I'm not going to give you a respirology lesson, but we need to be doing that. That's healthy for us to be doing. So how am I breathing, and can I shift my breathing? Even in the middle of a conversation where I'm really upset with somebody, can I pay attention to how I'm breathing and start to breathe much slower and deeper? What needs my attention in this moment, which is the point that you make? What do I really need to be paying attention to in this moment? Do I feel light or heavy-hearted, and what is my emotional state? Now, I was surprised a little bit, although I shouldn't have been, when I did a workshop one time, and the first time this has ever happened with this particular workshop that I've been doing for years, it was all men. And we were spending 4 days together doing some particular work, and we were talking about emotional states. And I ran into some folks who said, I don't have a clue what I'm feeling at any given point in time. I don't know how to access, I don't know how to name that particular emotion. So we did some work on that and started to figure out, well, what is your body telling you? What do you feel in your gut? What do you feel in your heart? What do you feel in your head? And through a series of conversations and questions, they were actually starting to figure out what it was that they were feeling and name the emotion. And once they named the emotion, then they could be in choice around how they wanted to deal with a particular emotion. So the invitation is simply stop and notice. Stop what you're doing. Where's my focus? Where's my attention? Where's my breathing? What have I done with my control? So when you're fighting with your teenager, or you're having a conversation with your boss, and your palms are starting to sweat, and the hair is standing up in the back of your neck, and you can feel your heart race, you're starting to give away your control. You're starting to have the physiological response. Your cortisol dump is starting, and this is when the invitation is simply stop and notice what's going on around you so you can be in choice. Because emotion plays a huge role. And we are not our emotions. He's a hothead. No, he's not a hothead. He's just an individual who, when he gets faced with particular sets of circumstances, reacts in a particular kind of a way. We're not our emotions. And anchoring that notion of that's something I can control is something that people don't often think, well, you made me do it. Well, you made me do it. Well, I'm mad because it's something you did. Well, no. I mean, you may have done something that I didn't like, but I'm in control of that. If your fault, and do that, then I've lost my opportunity to make a choice. Nobody makes me do anything. I have a response, and I can be in choice around that response. Some typical ways that we manage our emotion, we do these things with it. We filter, we personalize, we catastrophize, and we polarize. And sometimes people who need help dealing with stress, these are the names that are put on the description of what filtering is all about. A lot of things happen in the day, and a lot of it is really good, but the only thing that I take home with me is all the crap that happened. So I don't remember any of the good. I take home the crap, and I filter, and I focus on the bad instead of focusing on the good. If you find yourself filtering in that manner, a technique is you make a list of all of the things that are good that happened, and you let go of the bad and just focus on the good stuff that happened. Personalizing, and I'm sure that we all have someone in our life who's like this, all about them. And so, you know, we hear that there's road construction, you know, or we hear that there's a friend calls and the plan is canceled, or, well, it's because nobody wants to be with me. Or, yeah, it's because I got a meeting this morning. That's why the friggin' road construction is here, is because I got a meeting this morning. It couldn't be here any other morning. It's got to be here today. That's personalizing. Catastrophizing is to the extreme of everything is a catastrophe. So, you know, I get up in the morning, I put my shirt on backwards. It's just the start of a day. Nothing's going to go right today. Got out of the bed this morning and I put my shirt on backwards, you know. And then I went down and the dog had peed on the floor. And then I went to the car and the teenager hadn't left any gas in the car. That's the way my day is going to go. That's catastrophizing. The rest of the day is going to be a disaster. And polarizing is no middle ground. It's either good or it's bad. And so managing our self-talk, and a way that we can do that is actually take control over the stories that are going on in our head. And so we start to reframe things like I can't to I could, I can, I will need. In order for me to be able to be successful with that, which I will be, I will need. This isn't ever going to work. Sure it will. We have the capacity to be able to figure it out. So this is the invitation of the reframe. And so it's taking the negative perspective on the thing that we're faced with and shifting it around. So we often in coaching ask folks to do that very deliberately. When they say things like, well, I don't know if I can or not, we'll say things like, what if you could? If you could, what would be a first step that you would be taking? When you start to help people realize that they do have access to their own power and they do have access to their own control, then they start to think differently and possibilities open up. So what I see is people who are closed about it because they keep telling themselves, I can't, I can't, I can't. When you get to a place where you stop listening to the I can't and say, well, I believe you can, and let's talk about the ways that you can, then, and poke them a little bit, which is in response to how do you help people, you start not accepting it at its face value and ask them in a different way, they start to shift their perspective. This is a big one, I'm afraid. We can reframe that to, there are things that I need to learn to do or things that I need to do in order to be safe. This is a, I'm defeated, this is, I'm in choice. And so we're shifting, again, we're shifting perspective. So we're saying, what's the emotion I'm feeling? What do I want to do about it? What's the issue that's causing the emotion? How do I address the issue? How do I want to be with that particular issue? What outcome, as you said, do I want? What do I want a good outcome to look like? And if I was successfully managing this emotion, what would I be doing? Because it doesn't mean, I'm not asking you not to have the emotion. I'm not asking you not to have the emotion, I'm just asking you to manage the emotion. So let's say you're really upset with somebody. You're really upset, you did something to me. You did something that I feel was done to me, and I'm really, really angry about it. Well, first of all, you just did something, right? I'm doing those other things when I'm saying you did it to me. I'm in this situation with you, so I have a choice. You're an idiot. Why the hell would you ever do something like that? Do you know the effect that that has had on me? That's a choice, right? Or I can say, wow, when that thing happened, it had a really unintended impact. And this is the situation I now find myself in. I don't know quite what to do about it. I'm not okay with it. I'd love it if we could work it out together. I still am upset about it, but I'm naming it, owning it, claiming it, naming it, and inviting you into the conversation. Now, what did you notice that was different about those two?
One's more productive.
One's more productive. What was happening to your body when I was yelling at you?
Oh, this is definitely more stressful.
Right? I was now causing her to have a stress response, right? And so she's starting to have a cortisol dump. Because one of the first things that's happening to her is I'm driving her stress level up. We've got a left brain, right brain thing going on. And both parts of our brain work differently. Our left brain is our logical side, logical reasoning, all that kind of stuff, numbers, order, process. The right side of our brain is our emotional side. And if I meant to do it, but I didn't do it. If you were to think about it like this, left, right, just because I'm standing this way, and we were to divide our right brain into positive and negative, we don't have access to the left side of somebody's brain. I don't have access to the left side of your brain if I'm yelling at you. Because the only way for me to get over here is through a positive emotional door. So if I come in this way and I start creating a negative emotion in you, and you start to have that physiological response, you can't hear me. You're not able to hear me. So yelling at your kid because he or she didn't put gas in the car and now you got to go to work the next morning, they haven't heard you. They can't hear you. That needs to be a different conversation in a different way with a different invitation. You got to come in that positive side of that right brain. Engage that positive emotion before you can start to have a different kind of conversation with them. And just as a matter of fact, there's a part of our corpus, there's a part of our brain that different age in males and females, but it's not fully functioning until they're 23 or 24 years of age. So there's part of their reasoning that you can't even access until they're way out of teenage. everything we do, we have choice in every single thing we do. Every single situation we find ourselves in, we have choice. And sometimes the choice can be do nothing. And I love this little quote because everything we do is based on the choices we make. It's not your parents, your past relationships, your job, the economy, the weather, an argument, or your age that's to blame. You. And only you are responsible for every decision and choice you make. Period. And so that's a hard one for some people to get their head around because some people are victims of life. I say they came out of the womb, and the first thing they say when they learn to talk is, it was dark, wet, scary, and I didn't like that last turn. Right? But we can be in choice around all of this stuff. Viktor Frankl, who is a Holocaust survivor, says that between our stimulus and response, there's a space. There's a gap. And in that gap is the place where we can exercise our choice. In that gap. Our greatest freedom is the freedom to choose our attitude. So what's going on in our brain? 3 parts of our brain that are working together. We're a stimulus. The thalamus receives that and starts to translate that into brain language. Then it's assessed in our visual cortex. That goes through the, have you seen this before? How are you supposed to respond? What are you supposed to do with this? Oh yeah, okay, well, haven't seen it before, but doesn't feel like a threat. Seems okay. That activates then our amygdala, which is our emotional response center. But sometimes what happens is there's this thing called the emotional hijacking, where this visual cortex here is just completely bypassed. So when your parents told you count to 10, what they didn't know is they were explaining the way your brain works. So when you find yourself in it, you're stimulated, and now you're immediately going to emotion, I haven't given my visual cortex time to do the work. Take a breath. Take 3 breaths. Slow down. Let this part of your brain assess it for meaning, and then you can make a choice about how I actually want to respond emotionally. Do I want to yell your head off? Or do I want to be civilized about it and say, we've got a problem. You know, this situation, we need to deal with this situation. We've got a problem, and invite you in. Our breathing, again, will help us. Am I sweaty? My palms sweaty? Where's my breathing? What's my heart rate feel like? And we've talked about this. 90% of our energy is actually created by oxygen. Most of us too shallow. Our brain swaps the dominant nostril every 90 minutes. And the point of that is it's stimulating opposite sides of our brain. So when we're breathing deeply, we're actually having an effect on our brain as well. Our serotonin, I told you about the joy hormone, its name is serotonin. And we also need our respiratory system to get rid of a lot of the junk, a lot of the toxins that are in our system and released by our bloodstream. When we react, we are giving away our power. When we respond, we're staying in control. So, when you think about the things that we've talked about, what's something that you can take away and do differently because of what you heard today? And I don't want you to get all, too personal about it, but what is this making you think about that you can do differently?
Slow down. Just take 2 seconds longer to do something.
Slow down.
Because it allows you to
Yeah.
sort of catch up.
Yeah. What else?
Change my breathing.
Change your breathing. Yeah. What else?
So understanding the physiological reaction to something is very important. I think sometimes something very important will come at you. You're governed more by your physiological reaction to it than your logical reaction.
Right.
That's the idea of slowing down.
And because our right brain is engaged, right? Because the door to our left brain, to our logic, is through our right brain. That's the way in. So what is my emotional response? If my emotional response is a positive one, then you're quickly going to be able to go to the logical side. But if it's not, then you got to open that door before you can. Yeah, absolutely. What else?
Think more deeply about situations that are causing stress to see whether they are decided they are.
Whether the story that I've told myself is actually the whole story. And how can I unbundle this thing? What are the questions that I need to ask myself about this to find out what I've done, what I've done with my control, how much of it have I given away, what control can I take back, how much of this response can I manage, and totally be in choice about all of that. How many of you were here last time? Anybody? What do you remember about the levels of listening that we talked about? Anything?
That was the last time, was it? That was the
No, that was,
time
sorry.
before last.
The last time that I was here with you, what do you remember? Anybody who was here the last time I was here? Okay. What do you remember about the levels of listening? That there are 3 levels, yeah. What else?
First one's self-centered, second one
Right on. First one is all about the self, self-centered. The second one is other-centered. And the third is global listening. And so I'm just going to spend the last couple of minutes to help you figure out how that can help you be in choice. How has that affected your life since you learned that? Works very well with your wife? Yeah? Yeah? Seriously now, or are you just being, you're being quite serious? Yeah.
Before it was more self-centered, then I have to adjust how I address her and everything. So then I'm listening.
High five to you, man. Good for you. Excellent. So what he's talking about is something that we talked about last time called the levels of listening. 3 levels of listening. I told you I started out in nursing, and nurses and doctors and, people in the social sciences, we're all taught to listen really, really well. But it wasn't until I was exposed to levels of listening this way that I started to think about it very, very differently. First level of listening, level 1, is all about me. What's going on in my head, the sentence that I'm trying to finish as you're talking, oh yeah. The evaluation that I'm doing of what it is that you're saying, what you're wearing, the grocery list, all of that is level 1. The focus is on me. Most of us spend most of our time in level 1. Now, it's not wrong to spend some time in level 1 because level 1 can be really, really informative. But when we get lost in level 1, the only person we're really hearing from is ourselves. Level 2 is other-centered. So that's when we're having a conversation and I'm all about you. What's going on with you, what that means for you, the impact of that on you. And it doesn't mean I'm not participating. It just means that the focus is over here. So even though I might have a little bit of level 1 going on, like she might say something and I might be going, oh wow, glad that's not happening to me, I'm shutting my level 1 down and spending my time over here. Level 3 is global listening. It's about the energy in the space. It's the mood and the tone and the... So I think about it like this. If you can imagine, are you familiar with the expression, there's an elephant in the room or a moose on the table? Right? It's the thing that we're not talking about. The fact that everybody knows there's an elephant in the room is the global thing, right? We know there's an elephant in the room. We can feel it. So we're in a meeting, and people are dancing all around the subject, and I'm saying to myself, ain't no way in hell I'm bringing that up. I'm in level 1. And you're over there squirming in your seat, and you start to say something, and you're trying to get it out there, and I'm listening really carefully to what it is that you're saying, and I ask you a question, and I say, so what exactly is it that you're trying to say? Now I've shifted to level 2. Because now I'm over here and I'm really wanting to pull that out, get that focus, and listen and hear what it is that you're trying to say. And so I shut down, no way in hell I'm talking about that, and I go with you. So you bring it up and I say, well, what would be the impact of that? And if we did that, then what would happen? And what do we need to try to avoid? So we're starting to have the conversation around the thing that we don't want to have the conversation about. So we're in level 2. And the tension will start to shift as we start to name the elephant in the room. Now, it's not always, level 3 is not always about elephants. I mean, sometimes it's about good things too. Sometimes it's about laughter and fun and whatever. But levels of listening, when we pay attention to where is my head, what am I listening to, how am I listening, where's my focus? Is my focus all about me, or is my focus about you? When I start to realize that I can control that, I can listen differently and I can control that, then we can get to a different outcome. Okay, that's it. Questions? There's a lot of really serious faces here. So I've named the level 3. What are you thinking?
Thinking level 2, you're trying to get information out of somebody. Level 1, you're trying to tell somebody information, but you're kind of listen to them just so they'll listen to you, but you're really trying to get your information across.
Yeah, yeah,
So both of those, I can see myself doing in the run of the day, depending on whether I'm trying to learn or
yeah.
teach, I
Yeah.
suppose.
And so part of the secret is, can I know where I am? Because people know when they are not being listened to. They really do. And we might pretend like we're paying attention and listening, but they know when we're not. And it affects the relationship. And that affects stress, especially if it's in a situation in a workplace where it could be, someone who reports to you, or someone you report to, or a colleague that you're trying to do something with, and that you have a difficult working relationship with. All of that creates stress. So if I can pay attention, how am I listening in this particular situation? Where's my focus? Where's my energy? Then I can start to manage and control that, be in choice around managing and controlling that. Thank you. What else? Anything else?
It's the old saying that you can't learn anything when you talk. So that's level 2.
Yeah, and W-A-I-T. Why am I talking?
It also comes back to airtime. If there are 3 people talking, you should have 1/3 of the airtime.
Exactly.
Just a common
Yeah, and if you're a boss, you actually probably should have less. And one of the challenges that a lot of managers have is we take individuals who are really, really good at what they do, and because a lot of our organizations don't have what we call dual track promotion. In other words, you can be promoted because your subject matter expertise, and you just become better at everything that you do, so you're promoted because of your subject matter. What we typically do is, well, you're a really good engineer, let's move you over here and be a boss of other engineers. And we don't tell you that the job changed, that the skills changed, and that you need to show up differently in that relationship with other people. We don't tell you any of that stuff. Just go over there and look after those folks. Really good leaders, really good bosses come with more questions than they do answers. And what they do is they grow capacity in other individuals. When we don't do that, we create a whole lot of stress for the people that report to us. And so we really should be asking them open-ended questions and asking them about how they want to do the thing that they want to do, rather than all the time talking and telling them, giving them the answers. That way we hold them, we limit their growth. Anything else?
I find I get very stressed before an event, making sure all the things happen and the projector works. But then once it happens, it's actually not that stressful.
Right.
But I build it up a lot.
Right. So there is such a thing called eustress, EU stress, and distress, D-I-S stress. Eustress is a positive stress. That's the thing that keeps us sharp. So a lot of people, if you listen to athletes, they'll say that they can feel the adrenaline and all that stuff just before the race, et cetera, et cetera. Or if you're doing a concert and you're singing, you can feel that level of excitement before. Or if you're about to launch a new project and you just feel all of that. Some of that, if it's not the distress, is actually a positive stress called eustress. It's appropriate stress, and it helps enhance our performance. It's when we don't have a handle on that and it starts to go the other way that we catastrophize about it. Nothing's going to go right. Then it becomes a problem. So not all stress is bad. That little bit of that thing that we've got going on just before we're on is often eustress, EU stress. Okay? Thank you. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.